Hi folks, and welcome to the A Minute to Midnight Show. This is your host Tony coming to you from New Zealand. With me on the show today I have Stan Deyo, and Stan is a fairly frequent guest on the A Minute to Midnight Show, whom I always enjoy having discussions with, even though some of it scientifically is a little over my head, but it's still fascinating and very interesting. So welcome again, Stan.
Good to be here and with you. I know you're a long way away, but it's like you're next door when we do it this way. Good stuff. What have you been up to yourself? Have you finished redecorating that place or locking it up for when you take a trip to the States?
Oh, I've still got stuff to do. I'm due to head to America on June 4th. So that's coming up really quickly, and I'll be away for quite a while, at least 8 weeks. So there's a lot to do before I leave between now and then. I'm just trying to tick off a bucket list, really. But I'm looking forward to it. So,
Well, tell
it's
your wife
finally
howdy
great that the US dropped the vaccine mandate at the border, so I can get over there and be with Holly, in Pennsylvania. So,
Well, that is good. That may be all official. I have that picture of Gandalf in the background there, which is one of my favorite movies.
Lord of the Rings.
Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
All filmed in New Zealand, of course.
Of course, South Island, wasn't it? Something like that.
All over the place. Some of it South Island, some of it in the North Island. Yeah, it was quite widespread where it was filmed. Yeah.
Excellent. All right. I'm just going to be professional now then and go to my wide shot library here. There we go. Okay. Now we're good.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
With a wave of a hand, he's now in another place.
Yeah. That's transport. So are we doing time travel or?
Yeah. I ordered a part for some of our free energy testing we're doing from New Zealand. It should be here shortly. But it was the only place on the whole planet I could find this little spinner part that I wanted for it. But so, 2 connections to New Zealand today, you and the spinner.
Well, you'll have to, a bit later in the show, explain a little bit about your free energy project. So where do you want to start us off with, Stan?
Well, if your listeners can go to my show images page, go to standeyo.com, and then in the upper right hand, you'll see a microphone that says show images, and go over there. And this will be up for about till Friday or Saturday this week. It's slide 57 you want to look at. It's Dave Hodges reveals what has held back for decades, the truth behind Tesla and the Enron scandal. It's a video, and I think it's worth reading, watching. And anyway, so you can look at that, and we'll talk about that later. On the news on that page, there's also 4 slides I put up about where the planets are around the sun. Now, I've talked about this a number of times on your show, but the sun itself, this solar cycle 25, is it's irregular. It's doing things that it shouldn't be doing and greater by double than what it should be doing as far as sunspots and flares and coronal mass ejections. And when I wrote the book, Cosmic Conspiracy in 78, I forecast, along with Gribbin and Pledgeman from NASA there, that we would have a lot of solar activity in 1982 when all the planets lined up on one side of the sun. And to that end, I went to this, The Planets Today. It's a website. And I'm just going to make a picture here that if I can share it, I'm going to show your listeners here and watchers where the planets were in 1982, where we thought what was going to happen would happen. Now, I'm sharing the screen now. Let me have it, that one. Can you see it now?
Now I can. Yep, it's just come up.
Okay. Well, now, you'll see here Saturn, Jupiter, Uranus, Pluto, Neptune, all these heavy hitters, big gravity fields, were on one side of the sun in 1982. And so, along with Gribbin and Pledgeman, all of us thought that what was going to happen was it's going to squeeze the surface of the sun toward the Earth and toward Mars too, and create, horrific coronal mass ejections and eject it from the sun. But it didn't happen. And so we thought, well, okay, I guess that theory's wrong. And time passed, and I got to thinking about it here last January here, and I started researching what if it's not when all the big heavy hitters, gravity-wise, these planets are on one side of the sun with the Earth, but on the other side, so that they are stretching. As you can see, my cursor, if they're over on this side, they're going to stretch, pull thin this side of the planet. So, what would happen? And let's just see where we are here. Let's see. Okay, this is a picture of where the planets are this year in April the 29th. Now, here's the Earth over here on this side of the sun, and here are the heavy hitters, Uranus, Jupiter, Neptune, Saturn. All those big guys are over there coming into proximity with each other and on one side of the sun across from us. And I think what this is going to do, and we're seeing evidence of that already, is it's going to have increased solar coronal mass ejections and flares and all kinds of stuff coming off the surface of the sun faced at Earth. Mm. And if you look at the last 2 months, we've been having a lot of heavy stuff coming from the sun. As I said, this solar cycle was predicted by NASA and NOAA to be, let's say, let's see if I can stop that share here. Where's that stop share button? If we're looking at the graph of sunspots on the sun predicted by NASA and NOAA, let's say they predicted about here. But what has happened is that the actual count has gone double, twice as many sunspots and coronal mass ejections, double what they thought would happen. Now, 5 or 10% you can expect. Double is something serious happening with the sun. It's affecting our weather. So I looked at this graph I was showing you there, and I thought, well, what would happen? When is this going to happen again rather than now? We'll be on the same side as the big heavy hitters, the same side of the sun about, let's see here, about September the 29th of this year. So it's, we're on the same side of the sun with the heavy hitters. So I don't expect us to have a lot of trouble then, because the surface of the sun will be squeezed up, packed up on our side rather than thinned out, which allows these magnetic storms to occur. And on my show images page there, let's get off of that here. I'm going to come back and let you see this. This is going to show you the next time to start worrying, where we're going to see solar activity that could affect us here. That will be 2025, May the 18th. Things will be centered around that time. And I'm going to share that screen with you so you can see it. Then we'll get off of this. But, okay. So you can see here that the Earth is down here on this side of the sun from the gas giants. And as I said, that's May the 15th, 2025. We got, 2 years and that's going to happen. So I'm wondering when these things are going to happen to fulfill things in the book of Revelation, that John wrote about the sun and in the Old Testament, where there's going to be a cloud raised up around the sun, and the light of the sun is going to be 7 times brighter than it normally is. All these kind of things need activity on the sun. And I think what we will be seeing is this window on the 25th is probably the next one where we could see it. And if that's the case, then the tribulation may start now or sometime between now and 2025. There are a lot of arguments on which way it goes, but anyway, that's what we've got to look for in 2025, and it gets worse as you go on past that point. The site here that people can go to and they can plug in dates to see for themselves. The site is called The Planets Today, I think is the name of it. Yes, www.theplanetstoday, all run together as one word, theplanetstoday.com. And if you get to that spot, you can check all these things and alignments and go forward, 6-7 years and see what's going to happen. But that'll give you kind of early warning, and I think it'll be important at that time.
So what about in the meantime? Like, are we safe from major solar flares and, Carrington events and that type of thing?
Well, we can still have that now for the next, probably, if my hypothesis is correct, for about the next month or month and a half, we could be exposed to a major eruption. And we've seen some on the backside of the sun. Fortunately, it wasn't Earth directed, but boy, there've been some mighty. It was like 9 flares, M-class flares, which is just below X, the nasty ones. So yeah, keep watching now, and if we get through this into September, October this year, we might be good for another 6 months or so. We'll see. I'm looking at as half a year we'd be on the other side of the sun. Those gas giants, they travel. Their orbits are very long, and so they travel slowly as far as going around the sun. And of course, Earth goes zip, 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 like with Venus and Mercury, we go around quicker. So, yeah, I'd say that probably within 10 years, all this will be finished, whatever it's going to be. But sometime in there, several times when these heavy planets align on the opposite side of the sun from us, is when I predict that we're going to see major damage. And we could see the EMP pulse we're talking about, the Carrington event that you mentioned, wiping out, communications, wiping out computers and everything. If you don't have an EMP shield like we have over at empshield.net.com, and you can use our founder's code, which is Deyo-shield, and get $50 off the units if you're just now getting them. Of course, a lot of people have already done that and prepared for what may be happening as we speak. I'm not sure. But yeah, those are the things to worry about from the sun, and it's been affecting our weather. You're going to see a lot more violent electrical storms in the next 3 or 4 months. And they're starting. I mean, they're starting here. We've had drought here in Colorado for 2 or 3 years, extreme drought. Now it's starting to break in a irregular pattern because the El Nino is starting, and that gives us rain. But we're starting to see lightning in places that hadn't been there for a long time. States over states. So, yeah, that's something to watch and take care of that now. Okay, the other thing we were talking about earlier off air was about how to get energy, especially energy that's free, not coming from the power company or from solar panels or things like that. And I think that's going to be very important, Tony, because when the New World Order comes in and demands that people have a number, or they can't buy or sell, and they have to give allegiance to, the dictator at that time, the Antichrist, then those people that are here and believing, Jewish and Christian alike, who are believing that the word from God said, from Jesus and Matthew said, don't receive that mark. It's doom for you if you do. You're forever doomed. So what are you going to do when you don't have money? You can't pay your property taxes. You can't pay your rent. You can't buy gasoline. You can't own a car. Do you see what I'm saying? Yeah. So people are going to be relegated to going bush, I guess, is the simplest way to say it, and out of the city, because you're going to have to survive on what you can grow or shoot or fish or whatever. But one of the things that's tantamount to all this is power, electricity. You can purify your water by boiling it if you got electricity. You can communicate with each other if you got electricity. You can have warmth in the winter if you got electricity. So that's why my sons and I, the Deyo boys and me, we're working on making a very simple way to make the Moray free energy device, which is built on Tesla's free energy device that he ran a car on, which is also similar to very early ones with Benjamin Franklin, believe it or not, but he just didn't know how to convert it after he got it. So all these things we're researching now then and figuring out, okay, can we use a Wimshurst machine to kickstart this thing? Where does that energy come from? And so we found out. And what I want to tell you is on my show images page, I've sent you the link to it, slides 55, 56, 57, to see how another group did it in Sweden, a Christian group in 1920, how they made 2 big Wimshurst machines. I don't think I have a picture of it right here, but let me see if it's in there somewhere. They made these Wimshurst machines that didn't need to be cranked. They just need to be pushed to start them spinning in opposite directions. And with that, they were able to then generate electricity for a village of several hundred people for years and years. And they didn't share this with the rest of the world. They said, we're not going to give the secret away because we're giving it to a world that is not repentant and, would use it unwisely or unfairly or whatever. So they then, passed on, and parts of their invention have been filmed and passed to us, and so we've captured those things and are putting them into various reports right now. That PDF I sent you has some of the stuff in it and links to their sites.
So that PDF people can download that at slide 57, I think, isn't it? From memory?
The 55 does the download of that.
Okay. 55, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just checking here. Let me get that. Where's that download? I'll see what we've got in that PDF that we might be able to use here right now. It helps me to explain where the energy is coming from. That's the important thing. Once I tell you where it's coming from, there will be several other ways that you can access it with things that you can find around the garage and stuff like that. So it's basically tell you where it is and then how we've elected to get it, and you can use your own systems to do it. But once you get this electricity down, then you've got to convert it to usable voltages, like for the house and stuff like that. I'll just tell you, in the first page of the PDF, there's a series of 3 drawings next to each other, showing like a representation of space-time, of the quantity of the ether space around us. It's the small particles of that are what make atoms and electrons, and all of us. We're made from small particles in ether space, which is like a fluid. And when that fluid spins around a center, it creates gravity, like the fluid spins around the sun, the fluid spins around a planet. But here on the surface of the Earth, that there's pressure on all those parts of that fluid that are sideways and up and down, from the weight or from the spin of the Earth creating that weight or gravity on that field. But if you can put a balloon up 1,200 feet, a hydrogen balloon or hydrogen-filled balloon, a helium balloon, put it up and have an aerial 1,200 feet high, you can then hook that aerial onto an electrostatic motor, which will then start to spin from the voltage at the top of that wire down to where you are. Now, that voltage is, you don't want to have a helium balloon to run your electrostatic motor, which if you have enough high voltage and enough current in that wire, go up higher, it will let you run a generator, an electrostatic generator, which will make real power for your house and your car and whatever else. But you're not going to run around with a 1,200-foot aerial up in the air. Nikola Tesla didn't. He had a box that he put in his car that he modified to turn it into an electric car, and he drove all around town for a day with his electric car run by his conversion of this electricity. Well, how did he do it if he didn't have a 1,200 or 1,800-foot tall aerial? Well, these people in Sweden, I'm telling you about, made a thing called the Testatika, which was, basically a sort of Wimshurst generator. And you can read about it in the PDF file. What they did was they shocked the environment of space by a high voltage pulse that created a push up into this ether space around them. It was only just right there at ground level with them. So they pushed and they let go, and there was a surge of electricity back out as they opened up this hole in a substance that's kind of like wet quicksand. As soon as they punched a hole, then they let go. There was an overspill. Some of the quicksand or ether space punched through, but then it stopped itself by the sideward pressure. It just closed the hole. So if you put the balloon up, of course, you have a direct hole, all the way down using that voltage to push it open. So the secret is punch that hole, but keep punching it at high speed, maybe 200 or 300 pulses a second. You can do that with a spinning wheel, which is what they did. So they make a discharge, bang, and then another one, bang, bang, until they push up and open up a channel up as many feet as you want, up to the voltage level you want. And that high voltage then pours down that into 2 capacitors, which is, again, in that PDF file. And the trick is to let that high voltage keep coming by keep pulsing it. But as these pulses come through, they're high voltage pulses. Take them over into run an electrostatic motor, a generator. Take them into a couple of Tesla coils that are step-down voltage coils. So you can share that with your people. That's the way to do it, is to get that high voltage pulse to start with, this direct current, but then put it into a resonant system like Tesla's system to step it down, or put it into a direct current high voltage motor like Dr. Jeffermenko makes. And there are dozens of them on the internet. People have even 3D printed versions that you can, use a 3D printer and print the parts, put it together, and you have a Corona motor. So that's why you don't need to have an antenna or a ground. You can use capacitors like they did on this thing in Sweden. I'm very impressed with that, and my sons and I are both working toward that goal using the modern components that we now have access to. We don't have to do it exactly as crudely as they did in Sweden at that time. It worked. I mean, gosh, there several hundred homes had electricity all the time from it. But we're trying to make it with things that are available now and readily available, nothing exotic. And
Because
anyway,
you don't hear about things like that in the 1920s, that they were able to do that. That's quite staggering.
I know. We were very fortunate to be able to stumble onto that. Okay, you should be seeing the PDF.
Yep.
Okay. Well, this is what people can download from your site and mine. All right. Static pressure of space-time or ether space. The high voltage push up like that puts a shock wave up into it. And remember, it's like wet quicksand. When you close that hole, it'll overshoot and come back down this way. And that's what you're seeing here, high voltage snapback, the Overunity pulse back of energy. And we're using testing a few things like this here. This is a spinner, which lets us put charge on it from the pulsing that we're doing, and it causes that to spin. And we conduct the current through these prongs from one capacitor to the other one, and that's how we get Overunity we by using this spinner to connect the two. And this is a Wimshurst generator. It has two discs. You can see the one here on the front and the one on the back. And they turn manually, they turn opposite directions when you're generating electricity. We're using one of these to generate the first sparks to punch up into the ether space, like that the second drawing shows. And then to let it continue, we have a set of electrodes, which are right in this area here. And so that the power continues to flow without us doing it. This is a picture of the Swedish machine, the Testika machine. This over here is a capacitor, just an exotic cylindrical capacitor, and another one over here. And they have feeds coming from two Wimshurst type discs, plastic discs with metal foil with holes punched in it as a pattern. I'm not sure why they did this. Maybe it makes it breathe more efficiently electrically. I don't know. But you'll see that one of these is spun by hand, say that way, and the other one spun by hand the opposite direction. They have to be probably, I think they said like 18 inches, foot and a half or so in diameter at least, so that the speed at which these little pieces of aluminum foil on these discs, the speed relative to the front one and the back one is fast enough to generate a high enough voltage to push way up into it. You need to have a high voltage pulse, not just, 2,000 volts or something. You need to have something like 20 to 30,000 volt pulse. And that's the way you get it, is to have these bigger discs and then these capacitors. And there's a video you can see that they have on the site that I have listed. This red wire and this blue wire, right across these two, you can put a normal light globe and it starts to burn very bright. It's just an incredible thing to watch. Now, one of the secrets that I'm telling you is that you have to capture that high voltage first, the high voltage static electricity, but make it dynamic. And this is a picture of T. Henry Murray here on the right and his son John and some other guys down in their basement. And although they have this wire stretched as an antenna, you don't need to do it if you have capacitors. But he was a bit of a showman. That's the way he wanted to do it, so that he kept part of his secret. But you'll see his hand is an insulated cable coming down to his son's hand, where there is an electrostatic spinner, like a Benjamin Franklin type electrostatic motor. So that tells you he's pulling direct current here to spin that. And the trick is later on to take the energy from that pulse that's coming down to that spinner over into his Tesla coils to step it down to useful voltage and current and frequency to run your house. But this is a photo that a lot of people just looked at and said, oh, yeah, he's got an antenna on the ground. Okay, fine. But it's telling you that he was using a static field that was dynamic, really, because he was making that thing spin in his son's hand. And that is the clue. You have to download that static field and then convert it to electricity, to dynamic electricity. Anyway, look at that picture. That'll be important. And this, of course, was T. Henry Murray. Okay, that's enough on that one. And we'll close that off here. There we go.
So you yourself, how much of this have you actually done, like experimented and, where are you at with it?
Well, we've got all the gear here. We've even run an antenna, although I don't think we'll need it. We're waiting on some capacitors that we're going to buy online rather than spend the time to make them by hand. So I'd say we're within a few weeks of seeing, being able to light some fluorescent tubes, to start with. And hopefully we'll be able to share it with you when you get back to New Zealand. What do you reckon? You'd be gone about 8 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks?
8 weeks over there. Yeah. That's at this stage. That's the plan. Yep.
Are you going to do your show from here, or?
I will. I'm not sure how I'll be able to go interviewing people unless I'm right there, because I'll have portable recording devices and things. But in terms of doing this type of thing, I'll have to see if I can set up something. Well,
we're seeing a lot more frequent disclosures of the alien or UFO or flying saucer presence here. I suspect that this will be this new arrival, as they call it, the disclosure of our friendly aliens in the sky will happen when we reach the point of potential nuclear war here on the planet. And with the news we've gotten about Iran using Lebanon as their proxy, has been putting missiles, etc., into Lebanon. It's just you can throw a stone across the border and hit kibbutz in Israel. They're so close that if they launched from there missiles, Israel couldn't stop them. There wouldn't be enough time. So Israel is looking at making preemptive strikes right now on Lebanon, southern Lebanon, where these Iranian outposts are. If we see that happen and the stuff hits the fan between Iran, Israel, and Saudi Arabia, it's going to be a perfect time for the, spacemen messiahs, which are, Satan's fallen ones, to come forward and offer.
You might want to just give people a quick overview on what you believe the aliens actually are, or.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
We probably talked about this last show, but
we have talked about it, but it's quite some time ago. So yeah.
Okay, well, Satan, of course, rebelled against God, and he's down here with his supporters, about a third of the angels in the heaven who support him in this revolution and rebellion against God. They were cast down into our universe from God's universe, or from his heaven. Okay, it's like a portal that passed them down here. They couldn't bring all the technology through. He let them have what they had with them, and that was about it, like some saucers and some technology for anti-gravity and stuff like that. But they needed to have an infrastructure to build more technology for them to build an army and weapons to fight God, fight Jesus when he comes down here for the Armageddon battle. To do that, they made friends with humans and got really serious about building infrastructure around the time of President Truman, where we humans would give them access to facilities we'd build for them in hidden places, underground, undersea, at the South Pole, whatever, so they could make their own technology, and in return they would give us anti-gravity and a few other things in medicine and energy that we could use, stuff that wouldn't really be a threat to them if we decided to stop them. So Satan and his minions, they've built several fleets of all kinds of anti-gravity craft, spacecraft, aircraft, and seacraft, marine craft that'll work deep under the ocean. They're going to bring these to bear and say, look, we come from a nearby galaxy or planetary system, whatever, and we mean you no harm. We're here to help you. We see you're about to have a nuclear war. Your weather's going crazy. The sun is misbehaving. We're here to help you if you just let us appoint one of your humans to be in charge of the world government, and we'll give him technology, like Daniel talks about in the book of Daniel. And to that end, people that don't know better will say, oh, yeah, okay, we don't want to die, and if you could help us, that'd be great. The option, of course, is death, and so people are pretty much going to take his option, his deception. And that's what's spoken about by Jesus, is beware of this huge deception that's coming from the earth. They're going to pretend to be him, and from he say that Jesus is one of them type thing. And there are going to be things that they'll do to impress the people that don't know better. Like, suppose they'll show you a video or a three-dimensional movie of the crucifixion itself. I mean, they were here at that time and before that time, so they had the technology here with them to record this stuff and say, yeah, well, Jesus is one of us, ascended master, that kind of stuff. They will fool people that don't know better. So that's why it's important for us to explain how the technology works, energy, anti-gravity, flying saucers, what Satan has done and what humans have done to help him build his facility. And I worked for that program with Dr. Teller down in Australia.
Well, that's it. See, some of the listeners that are probably younger and don't actually know, they might be thinking, oh, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. He's like, this is off on some freaky tangent. But the fact is you yourself actually worked on these projects back in the 1970s and you wrote the book, The Cosmic Conspiracy, about this. So it's not like just some fairy tale. You were actually part of the program. So that's what people who don't know need to realize.
That's true. I'm glad you brought that up. Yes, well, they've moved a lot further along in their technology and their developments than what I knew back in the early to mid 70s. But I'm sure that it's, they're doing things like being able to go through solid walls, walk through them without damaging the wall or the person doing it. And a lot of the things we've heard as far as abduction cases where they, teleport people up or raise them up from the deck up underneath into a ship and operate on them. I know there was one researcher here, Linda Moulton Howe. Have you heard of her work on the flying saucers? Well, she's America's well known for that. At any rate, she was investigating cattle mutilations where the cattle would be dead, no obvious cause of death, and there would be no blood on the ground, and they would be drained of blood. And they would have an eye cut out and a tongue cut out and a whole cheek and everything cut out, not bloody, but sealed and perfectly removed. And I explained to her at that time, this is when she started talking about in 2000 or so. I said, look, they're using what's called an ultrasonic knife. We use it in surgery, the humans do, to vibrate at 55,000 times a second and to cut and seal tissue. And so they could separate this. It's not magic. It's just technology. And she thought, no, that can't be right. But that's what was happening. It's used to drain the blood with high voltage and with high frequency knives, surgical knives. And this has been happening, for 40, 50 years all over the planet where cattle and horses and things have been mutilated in this way. Why they're doing it, I was never told. I don't know whether they needed the blood or the genetic material. They did seem to take from steers or from bulls. They would take their sex organs and they would carve them out like a cup with this ultracision, which would be a nice, smooth, polished edge, and they'd take their reproductive system out, which had sperm or DNA material. Maybe they were using that to create hybrids of some sort. I don't know, but they've been doing a lot of it across the mountains from us here in the San Juans in Colorado. This technology is not magic. It is just advanced technology. And of course, sufficiently advanced technology looks like magic to the people it's being shown to, flying saucers, all kinds of things, computers even, would seem like magic 200 years ago to people. They think, wow, how does that work? And wouldn't have a clue. But now we're getting to the point where we can understand these things. And so it's going to be used against humans. Say, yeah, you can understand these things. This is just technology, and we're here to help you. We're going to give your leader technology to solve the weather, solve the nuclear problem. And they're going to be able to fly over all the nuclear missile silos and de-arm the nuclear weapons. This will impress most people because it'll say we're going to have peace. We're not going to have a nuclear war. So you can see how Satan can, by deception, fool the entire planet if they're not aware of it. That's why Jesus mentioned this in Matthew. Don't be fooled by this. And if, the Antichrist comes and says he is Jesus, or here is Jesus in the desert in the secret place, go to him there, don't believe it. He says, look, when I come, he says, I'm going to be visible all over the planet like lightning from the east to the west. Every living thing will know that I'm there when that time comes. And that's probably at the end of the tribulation period, the end of the Armageddon crisis. But if they say go meet us here, or meet him here in the secret place, or he's up in an orbit, or he's out in the desert, that shows that they are limited. They don't have the technology of the creator that created a whole darn planet. So that when they're substandard, that means they aren't the original. Just look for signs of substandard technology.
So you don't believe that these aliens are from some planet reticuli or some far distant galaxy, you know?
Well, I don't believe that they are like, they could be at this point in time. Satan could have traveled to those places using warp drives. We understand how warp drive physics works now, and you can travel multiple places. And you can also, when you're allowed, punch up into the parallel universe above us in energy where God lives and travel a short distance there and then drop back down and be clear across the universe that we live in. You don't have to travel through it. You can gate around it that way. But, if they have proof that they're from Zeta Reticuli or, from some planetary system nearby at Betelgeuse or something, it will be because they've gone there and set up the deception.
Right. That makes sense.
And they're going to be, and they're going to be, I'm sure they've been breeding or making clones of things that are reptilian, insectoid type things, all this kind of stuff that will tell people, well, they're not from around here. And, so that's the deception. And we know that they did this before the Great Flood. They were making hybrid beings like a cyclops with one eye he would eat people, and then Hercules, who was very strong, he was a hybrid. There were a number of hybrid beings made during that time there, and that was in the Levant, where Israel and the western side of Saudi Arabia is today, and the giants like Goliath and his four brothers, and like King of Bashan Og, his bed was 18 feet long. So these were all remnants of what Satan and his minions were doing by crossbreeding, and they're doing it now. So if they could do that then, and that was 2,000 or 3,000 years ago, well, gosh, can they make insectoids? Can they make reptilians? You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
And they had time to grow them and have cultures of them. So
I remember some years ago, I think you described it's like in a meat suit, really, like a demon and hell, or a fallen angel inhabiting a body that they've made, basically.
Right. Well, look at these the gray critters, the small ones, and even the tall ones. When people have been abducted and have been operated on by these beings inside a craft or a room or whatever, they've all reported how soulless their eyes were and how these beings didn't care whether they were hurting them or whether they were screaming or not. There was no empathy, and that's like a computer program, they've made something into an organic body, but it's really, organic, and it's not God made, it's not human, it's a machine with flesh tones.
Yes, that makes sense. That really does make sense. Yeah, because this is the whole deception where people believe that there's some advanced race from some other, planet somewhere, and not see the demonic or the connection. I believe there's a difference between demons and fallen angels. I won't get into that right now, but there is. The majority of people won't see that that's where they're coming from. They're just going to think there's some advanced, race from some other planet, but that's all a deception.
Well, you and I and others like us that are trying to warn people of this beforehand are leaving, video copies, printed copies, audio copies of this all over the planet, so that even though they might be fooled to begin with, this will explain to them what is really happening and, what they have to do to avoid, being caught up in it. I hope the majority of people that listen to this already commit their life to Jesus and are saved before that time, because I don't want them to go into the tribulation period where people who do suddenly believe in Jesus are going to be caught and beheaded for their faith. I'd rather that they get raptured up beforehand. So we do the best we can.
Right. Okay. So, Stan, that was interesting. Can you just tell the listeners again where they find you, and also if they want your EMP shields, where they find that?
Sure. Our website that Holly updates with news 6 days a week is Stan Deyo, STANDEYO .com. And on that site, there's links to show images in the upper right-hand corner, which I update once a week or so, giving you information on what's important at that time. And then as far as getting a shield for your house or your car or your solar power from EMP pulses from bombs or from the sun, go to our website. It's a company that my partner Tim Carter and I started. It's called EMPshield.com. All one word, EMPshield.com. Our factory phone number's up there. The product is under a drop-down menu called Shop, and we have it for solar, for RVs, vehicles, home, generators, all kinds of stuff. We've made these things for them, and for some government departments and from nuclear reactors to try to keep them from blowing up when the solar flares kill the power to them, that kind of stuff, or communications with the computer. There's just so many things out there that in our country and elsewhere in the world, but mainly here, that control gas pressure, natural gas pressures and electric voltage and distribution. These little SCADA devices are called. We started protecting those. We haven't done them all yet, but these things, if they are destroyed, they control whole neighborhoods and regions, control the gas pressure. And if those get hit by an EMP pulse, you can expect gas explosions in homes, from the runaway gas pressure. So this is why it's important for not only individuals to get these EMP shields, but for your local power company, your local gas company, to get them for these SCADA devices to protect you. We're dealing with a number of community groups over in Kansas. The first ones we're testing it on, where we actually made like an electricity meter that's for your home, but there's a sandwich disc that goes in it, and it's our EMP shield for that house for all of its power. And that company or that group of people over there are putting it in all their utility power packs, for the houses, for the meter. And if you don't do this, if you don't have any protection to take this extremely high voltage generated by an EMP pulse from the sun or from nuclear devices, what will happen is it will generate between 20 and 60,000 volt arcs in your wall in the breaker box and start a fire. It will burn whole neighborhoods down simply from those shortovers. That's why we're saying get these EMP things so that they shields so they can take that high voltage and instead of letting it arc over in your wall, drive it down into the ground. And that's the whole principle of what Tim and I've put together there. There's going to be widespread fires no matter what. There's going to be things that aren't protected in the power grid, transmission lines and stuff like that. But we're helping what we can as fast as we can. We've got about 50 employees working on it now, and government grants coming in. The state government of Kansas has already given us a pledge of $1.9 billion with a B dollars, and the federal government CHIPS Act is looking at giving us another $1.2 billion by August this year. That's how important they think it is, and this is even Democratic Congress doing this. So that should tell you something.
Yeah, well, that's certainly. I remember when you were first starting out this company, that's grown massively. So
it has.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Stan, that was a really interesting discussion, and we will have to do something again before too long. We'll just have to work out how I'm going to do things while I'm over in America, which I haven't sorted out quite yet. So we'll be back in touch anyway.
Have a safe trip there and back, and tell your wife that we do pray for her healing. Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you, Stan. And folks, don't forget to visit aminutemidnight.com and subscribe to us there. YouTube has recently banned another one of our videos. So folks, don't rely on YouTube, please. If you can subscribe to us at our website and also our Rumble channel or our BitChute channel and our Apple Podcasts and YouTube as well, but just don't rely on YouTube. And A Minute to Midnight's run 100% by donations, and if you want to help us keep this running, it's always very much appreciated, and you can do that at our website, aminutemidnight.com. Also the music that's used, I've written, played and recorded, and there is other free music of mine on our website which you can download as well if you want to do that. Well, God bless, and hopefully we'll be back with another video in a few days.